Dan Illman, Mike Beer, the second of two graded stakes races at Saratoga on Friday, is the Troy for turf sprinters, and it should be a war. Let's throw up the field for race number 9 at Saratoga. We're going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. $200,000 is the purse. I think you can make a case for 8 or 9 of these horses.
Yeah, it's a really strong field. It feels like many of the top turf sprinters in the country have sort of turned up for this race, Dan. It does really feel like it's going to be a real race to the wire here.
Key to this race might be in the Timeform US pace projector. We'll throw it up right now. Bit surprising that they consider this a blue bar scenario, favoring horses on or near the early lead. Chateau is trying turf. He's basically a dirt horse and he's fast. If he is able to transfer his dirt speed to turf, he can make the lead. Bound for Nowhere would love that situation because he's naturally quick. He doesn't need the lead to win, and he went guns blazing last time. If Chateau is his target, Bound for Nowhere's in a good spot.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it feels like if this is the way the race is run, it's a big advantage for Bound for Nowhere. Who, listen, if the pace is slow, he's just going to be sitting right up there, probably in a perfect trip. The wild card within the race, and as far as the pace goes, is the number 10 Lazuli, who is a horse who looks like a bit of a free running horse over in Europe. Then I think that horse is going to be close.
Fast Boat, the number 1, is one of the horses in this race with credentials to be sure. He's earned over $500,000 in his career for Joe Sharp, and he rallied from off the pace in the Grade 2 Twin Spires Turf Sprint to Churchill Downs. Now, he got the right setup in that race, and he just didn't fire last time out in the Jaipur. He didn't get his early position, but I couldn't find an excuse for that run.
I feel the same way about it. I mean, the pace was there for him. I felt like all in all, he got a pretty good trip in there, came clear in the stretch with Casa Creed right alongside. It felt like they both had a shot at it. And this horse just got out kicked in there. I didn't see the excuse. He has been a little bit of an in and outer, Dan, but we know from watching several of his races, his good race is pretty good.
Illman has 2 very talented horses in this race. The 12 Casa Creed, the 2 Chewing Gum. They ran 1-2 in that order in the Grade 1 Jaipur last time out. The concern for Mott is not only this pace scenario, because both of those horses like to come from out of it, but also whether this 5.5 furlongs is a bit sharp. They might want to go simply a bit longer.
Yeah, I think that's a real question for both of Mott's horses. You're right about that. This horse, Chewing Gum, did run in the Troy last year. Wound up getting outrun. He was racing on at the end, but he really couldn't make a late impact. And it did feel like maybe the distance worked against him that day. He's going to sit back, try to make one run. I realized that he ran a fast race last time, Dan, but when I watched that race, to me, he was a little bit of a suck-up second in there.
Perhaps a horse that's flying a little bit under the radar at a price is the number 3 Classy John, a Louisiana bred for trainer Dallas Stewart, because this horse has the tactical speed that if the pace is moderate, he can get up close. And he was racing in pretty good form at Churchill Downs before going on the sidelines for 2 months. Now, likely a little bit of a step up in class for him, but he made the first move in that turf sprint that was won from way out of it by Fast Boat. That race might be better than it looked, and he ran to a sharp one last time and just might.
Yeah, I mean, listen, his recent form is very good. The last win for him against Louisiana breds, a race like that's just not going to get it done in here. He was just sort of more game than anything else winning that race, but it does feel like he has improved in his last 2 starts.
It was also almost 30-1 when he won that race against weaker Louisiana breds. Back to his roots, I think it's a really fascinating horse for John Terranova, because this time last year, he was starting to get good. He looked good winning that 2 other than at Saratoga 2 starts back. He was 3-1 off that race in a Grade 3 at Belmont, and he dumped the jockey. He's been away for a very long time. Interesting that he returns as a gelding. I think this horse has some ability, but it's a tough spot off a long layoff.
That's what I thought. I mean, I did like the form that he was in last summer. And, when he won up here last year at the end of August, he ran really well that day. He comes back in a very tough spot as a new gelding. But I guess if you want to keep the faith, he's going to be a huge price.
Let's watch Front Run the Fed's last race, his last start for Chad Brown, and he finished 3rd in the Grade 3 poker here, going a mile. He was hung out outside, and he makes a run and has a look at it in mid-stretch, and he just flattens out a little bit. I think cutting back to 5.5 furlongs is going to help. After this race, he went through the auction ring, and he sold for a pretty penny, $440,000. Not bad for a veteran 5-year-old.
No, not. I feel like when you look at it, we've done a lot of his races, Dan. I feel like you can look at this horse and just feel like he's just been a real underachiever for when he was with Chad Brown and Clara, but she never really panned out. I personally have never been a fan of his. I also feel like when I look at him, I think he just might be a sprinter, and they might not have sprinted this horse enough when they had him. They tried to make him a miler. He ran some good races. his 2 sprints at the end of last year, those are good performances. His Kentucky down race, I personally believe that he ran a better race than Imprimis that day, and he just got nailed on the wire in there. And he had a pretty tough trip in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint.
Gear Jockey, the number 6, goes out for a trainer that's done very, very well over the years, training excellent turf sprinters. And maybe Gear Jockey has found out what he wants to do. Let's watch his race earlier at the meet at the Spa. They finally cut him back to 5.5 furlongs. The first time sprinting since his debut, the first time sprinting on turf. He got close to the pace. He bulls his way by. He earned a respectable 95 Beyer speed figure. This is a big class test, but I have a feeling that this twirling candy colt wants to sprint.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I don't know if he's good enough to beat this field, Dan, but he looked good winning this race. It obviously wasn't as strong as this Troy field he's going to face, but that wasn't a weak allowance field, and this horse won that race very easily. I agree with you. I think he's a sprinter.
Imprimis, the number 7, is one of the top sprinters in the country on turf. He finished first in this race last year and was disqualified. He's seeking his 10th lifetime win. He threw a fit behind the gate in the Shakertown last time out. Then he broke through the gate before the start. And then he ran really well to just get beat a nose by Bound for Nowhere. He's tactical enough that he probably works out a good trip. And this is a race where you've got several horses that are questionable at the 5.5. Not so with this guy.
Right. This is a great distance for him. I suppose the pre-start antics there, I guess you could say that's his excuse for the Shakertown, because on the track, he ran fine, but he didn't have any excuse not to win that race with Bound for Nowhere gunning him down in the stretch. He only got beat a nose. But to me, anyway, Bound for Nowhere ran a much better race than he did that day. But maybe all that stuff that went on before the start compromised this horse. Obviously, if he shows up and runs his good race, he's very tough in here.
I think Javier Castellano has to go with Karatari, the number 7, at 15-1. His best races have come when he's able to make the lead, and he's pretty quick. He's catching a field without a ton of speed. Maybe he's not up to being a graded stakes horse at this point in his career, but he's run several good races on the turf, including a victory at Saratoga a couple of years ago. That was a nice performance in 2019.
Yeah, he's made a multiple stakes winner sprinting on the turf, so he does have some ability. I really couldn't talk myself into him being good enough to beat all of these horses, but I think your prior point's pretty well taken, Dan. This horse does have speed, and as we already saw in the pace projector, this race may not be run at a fast pace.
And Chateau is likely the speed, the number 9, if he is able to transfer his form to turf. He's run well on dirt in many of his races for Rob Atras this year. He doesn't really finish his races off. Maybe turning back to 5.5 will help him do so.
It feels like shorter is better for this horse, to be sure. He's very fast. I give Rob Atras a lot of credit for the job he's done with this horse. He's just not very good, and he has no turf pedigree.
Usually the European turf sprinters, the European turf horses, we usually are automatic contenders. We consider them when they come over here in the States. Turf sprinters may be a little bit less so. Lazuli, on the other hand, goes out for Charlie Appleby, who's been sending out nothing but live horses in the States this year. This horse was a Group 3 winner 2 starts back. And you're right, Mike, he was up close to the pace in that 5 furlong heat, and then he gutted it out. Last time out, maybe the soft ground wasn't what he cared for.
Yeah, I wonder what the excuse was last time. Maybe it was the ground down. He was pretty bad last time. Made a brief lead in there, but he was no match for that field late. That wasn't his best performance, but prior to that, it felt like he was in really good form. He ran several really nice races. He does have speed. So if this race, isn't run at a fast pace, I expect him to be up close. He's a real wild card in here.
Bound for Nowhere and Casa Creed come out of the Jaipur. We're going to take a look at that race right now. Bound for Nowhere went hard and heavy on the lead. He battled a couple of horses into the ground, Gregorian Chant, Sambaye. He still has the lead after those innovating fractions. And here comes Casa Creed, another horse that might have found himself at shorter distances. You're going to notice, though, this race really falls apart at the end. Not only does Casa Creed win, but Chewing Gum, who was far, far back, is going to get up for second. There are a lot of folks that believe Bound for Nowhere ran the best race this day, considering the pace situation, and he could get a better trip this time around.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at the race. And I like Casa Creed a lot. I do think he's turning out to be a better sprinter than he was a router. And so I won't be surprised when he shows up in here and runs another good race as he cuts back another half furlong. But to me, coming out of that Jaipur, I do really feel like Bound for Nowhere is the horse that you want. He did all the hard work in there in a race that totally fell apart. And I just felt like even though he was even money, he was pretty unlucky not to win.
Top pick time for the Troy, and I agree with you that Bound for Nowhere might have run the better race, and I think a lot of people will as well, because Casa Creed, I think, will go off a better price once again. And The question is pace. Does he get pace, and is 5.5 too sharp for him? So far, the 7 and the 6 haven't been a problem. I talked to Bill Mott after the race, and he was like, listen, 6 and 5.5, 6 at Belmont, 5.5 at Saratoga. It's a completely different ball game. So he's curious to see what Casa Creed does, but I'm interested in see what he does late. Front run the Fed, though, Mike. Really interesting candidate off that public auction sale, 440.
Yeah, I don't know anything about his new trainer, Dan. Who knows? So, I'm just not going to really concern myself with that, and just hope that this horse comes back in the form that he was in and just can show up and run one of his good races. I've talked myself into the idea that he's just a turf sprinter, and this is the right spot for him. He's 15-1 on the line. I can't argue with that.
Pace and trip might make all the difference in the Grade 3 Troy. Just a wide open, fantastic betting race at the Spa on Friday. Mike goes 5, 11, 10, 12. I go 12, 7, 4, 6. Good luck.